hours after an attack, but are slow to improve security.
When they walk to and from synagogue, they get abuse shouted at them by people on street corners, by people from passing cars.
We came to protest against the situation. The Jews cannot go up to the Temple Mount to pray, to worship.
Authenticity versus allegory, the triumph of the myth of Moses. The character Moses is one that's been reflected in various texts throughout time. Moses can be seen in 3 different religions: Judaism, Christianity, and the Islamic faith. However, many critics and historians are skeptical of the existence of Moses. But does lack of historical evidence make blind trust or faith put in a single man too great? The triumph of the myth is that Moses plays, to this day, a key role in various texts throughout multiple religions. However, tragically, he might not have been real, and instead was an accumulation of multiple myths combined into a single man. This documentary, we will see how Moses is viewed by each religion, and then examine historical evidence for his existence. The myth of Moses in Judaism. Moses is a very prominent figure in Judaism, with claims that Moses himself had written the Torah. However, how the Torah was received is up to debate, with some stating the Torah was given to Moses scroll by scroll, taking a total of 40 years to complete. Others claim it was received all at once, or at least in a more quick and progressive way. Finally, there are those who say the scrolls telling the Moses and Exodus story was written and recorded way before the completion of the Torah itself. Here is noted theologian Rabbi Mintz.
So why do we believe that Moses led the Jews to the Red Sea, but we don't believe that Jesus walked on water?
That question, I'll answer this question too. And this answer is very, very simple, because that is very important to know. The big difference between the Jewish tradition and the non-Christian or any other religion is that at the time that God gave the Torah to Mount Sinai, there were millions of people that witnessed it. They saw God coming down with the lightning and the thunder, speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, and all the action that happened at that time. But God spoke to them. They heard his voice speaking to them, was witnessed by millions of people. By any other religion, for instance, Yoshka that I don't want to say his name, Yoshka that you're talking about, he was not witnessed by anybody, maybe 1 or 2.
Dr. Ross Brand, professor of Judo-Islamic Studies at Cornell University, was able to respond to interview questions via correspondence. When asked the question, how important is the historical accuracy of Moses in your field, he replied, "What matters in religious studies is that Jews, Christians, and Muslims each develop traditions around the figure of Moses, and these traditions are central to how the religions understand their sacred history, especially for Judaism and Islam." Nonetheless, Moses' role in the Jewish Torah is non-negotiable, with the clear assertion that he was a true prophet in person. However, in Christianity, Moses is seen as a saint and enforcer of God's laws. The myth of Moses in Christianity. To the Christians, Moses was the one who delivered the 10 Commandments to the Israelites, and shamed them when he found them worshiping a golden calf as their god. The Christians also see Moses as sort of a foreshadowing for Jesus, as like Moses, Jesus put forth morals of his own in the Beatitudes.
The descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were slaves in Egypt for roughly 450 years. And God raised up for them a Messiah named Moses. This Messiah, this Moses, he was tending the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro in the Sinai desert when he saw something very unusual. He saw a bush burst into flames. It's not unusual in the heat of the desert for bushes to burst into flames, but what was unusual about this particular bush was that it was not being consumed by the fire.
Even at the time of his death, Moses is seen as a faithful servant to the Lord, as on his deathbed the Bible states, "Since then no prophet has arisen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face." But none of these religions would compare to the role of Moses in Islam. The myth of Moses in Islam. Moses is the most mentioned prophet in the Quran, and is compared to the Prophet Muhammad in both morals and his love for Allah. Like Christianity's story of Moses, his mother is forced to cast him down the Nile River in an attempt to save his life. While the Christian version, it is the Pharaoh's daughter who finds and adopts the young baby. In the Islamic version, it is the Pharaoh's own wife.
What was the religion taught by Moses? We believe that the Holy Prophet Moses was a true messenger of God. God was directly in communication with him, and whatever he gave in his time to his people was from God. Moses was alive with us here today, or if on the other side, if we have the good fortune of meeting Moses and shaking his hands, and if we asked him, "Oh Moses, what is your religion?" Since he didn't hear the term Judaism, he can't say Judaism. I expect him to say that my religion is a religion of total submission to God's will. A beautiful definition for the teaching of God. My religion is a religion of total submission to God's will. And I'm responding, I'm telling him, I'll tell him that one word for that in the Arabic language is Islam.
In Islam, God is a constant present in Moses' story. In addition to this, Allah is more merciful and forgiving than his Christian counterpart. In both religions, Moses comes down from the mountain and finds the Israelites worshipping the golden calf. In the biblical version, he breaks the original 10 Commandments in anger. In contrast, the Muslims believe that, instead of being angry, both Moses and Allah were forgiving. But how can these three religions have faith in different versions of the same events? The question of authenticity. Dr. Ross Brand from Cornell also spoke to the existence of archaeological evidence and historical accuracy of Moses. He replied that there is no direct historical evidence for the Moses story, but there is indirect historical evidence for some of the elements in the biblical account. A 12th century Egyptian text speaks of vanquishing Israel. It is the oldest historical reference to such a people outside the Bible. Only some of the detail in the story match what is known from archaeology or ancient Egyptian material. Though Moses is a prominent figure in these three major religions, there is no clear archaeological evidence for his existence. In addition to the lack of physical evidence, the Bible, Torah, and Quran fail to name the pharaohs at the time of the Israelites' escape, despite being cast as Ramses II in multiple modern films. Ramses is famed for his conquests and building projects, but in their digs and readings of inscriptions and papyrus, historians have found no trace of Moses under Ramses' reign. In a PBS Nova article, Dr. William Dever, distinguished professor of Near Eastern archaeology at Lycoming University, said, "I have always thought that if we resurrected someone from the past, one of the biblical writers, they would be amused, because for them it would have made no difference. I think they would have said, faith is faith is faith. Take your proofs and go with them." Dr. Dever goes on to say that, "The fact is, archaeology can never prove any of the theological suppositions of the Bible. Archaeologists can often tell you what happened and when it happened and where it happened and how and even why. No archaeologist can tell anyone what it means, and most of us don't even try." Though a tragedy that Moses might not have been real, it is a triumph nonetheless based on the overwhelming amount of attention and blind faith put into him by the Islamic, Christian, and Jewish faiths. Overall, Moses' effect on the three stated major religions is a ginormous one, whether it be by him being the most mentioned man in the Quran, the man who wrote the Torah himself, or the man who spoke directly for and taught the people about God. Despite lacking physical evidence, more than 3 million people worldwide believe in him in some way, showing that though these people's faith in him is blind, the morals and beliefs he teaches stay with us all.